Brian, because it's not really his field. And yeah, then he told me the idea, and it sounds fantastic. So I'm very, I'm looking forward to this talk. He's going to be talking about voice control on the web. So we'll do a switch over, and then Brian can take it away. There's your HDMI.
What? So
yeah, the cable's about to cast all the mic off.
Right, so hopefully, I think I've probably met most people in the room before, but over a beer. I'm not a developer. If I was going to be remotely classed as one, it would be more in the PHP and MySQL area. And although this talk really is about JavaScript, I'm not actually going to be doing any JavaScript. I'm just going to inspire you to do some JavaScript, I hope. So we're now into the fifth age of computing. The fifth age of how we use computers, how we interact with them. And of course, computers are now absolutely part of our life completely. There's almost nothing we do that doesn't involve a computer. And so what are those 5 steps? Well, so originally, if anyone's old enough to remember, we started off just with a character interface. Just typing commands. Then we moved into the graphical user interface, the web, touch, which is what I'm using here on my laptop for this presentation, and now we're very much into the age of voice. And most of the time, when we think of voice on the web, or voice and computers, we're thinking about Siri and Alexa devices or your mobile phone. We're not thinking about your website. I just want to show this clip from Star Trek. This is from Star Trek 4 Undiscovered Country. I know somebody's laughing already, but one of the elder people in the room. For the younger ones in the room, this movie was released in 1987, and the crew of Star Trek had gone back in time to 1987, and he needs to use a computer. Ooh. Okay. Right, the volume's up. Where's your bit?
Is the speaker on behind you?
It was on when we tested it.
Yeah, I don't know if it turns itself off.
It's very well done.
That is, I think it's Bluetooth. That's detached itself. I've broken things.
It's not playing. We've got
Computers never work.
We've got a backup plan. So just while I'm doing this is why you should always test everything first, which we did.
And then don't trust it anyway.
And then don't trust it anyway and make sure you've got an alternative solution. Helps.
Between live and not live.
And an alternative solution that's...
How many backup solutions do you have?
There's a power switch. That's better. And this may be really loud, so hold on. Okay, not loud at all. That's why.
Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
A keyboard. How quaint.
So, that was going back in time, but I remember watching that in 1987 and seeing him pick up the mouse to talk to it. Bear in mind, in 1987, actually, it was pretty rare to see a mouse. Yeah, that was the Mac 2E, I think, or Mac that he was using. And that was really early on. And we didn't, the thought of actually doing text to speech or speech to text on our everyday computer was just didn't exist. And probably about 10 years, 87, about 10 years later, I went to a presentation by IBM of their ViaVoice system. And IBM ViaVoice then, it was obscenely expensive, I think it was about £1,000. It was a physical device, that a card that you plugged in to your computer, and you had to train it for about 60 hours for it to even remotely have a go at doing the speech. So as you've noticed, it's transcribing as I speak, not perfectly, but considerably better than the IBM ViaVoice did for £1,000 with a lot of training. So this is not trained, this is just me speaking generally. And of course, we also have speech to text. And the two go together, but we actually use them both very differently. And finally, the third part of the speech is using our voices to control the devices. Classic movie 2001, the computer replied, "I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that." And that's always been one of the fears that people have had about voice. But the reality is, voice is dumb, it's programmed, it's programmable. Google, I just grabbed these just 5 minutes ago, these search stats from Google. 27% of people who are online use voice search on their mobile devices. 70% of the people using Google Assistant on any of their devices are speaking in natural speech. They're not going turn left, switch on, volume up. They're doing things like, please make it louder. They're speaking in natural speech, and that's a massive progress. So there are some limitations though with all of this. The first limitation is a technical one. Do the browsers support the ability to do this? Well, one half of I was talking about is speech recognition, and up until this year, it was only Chrome that supported speech recognition directly in the browser. Now, as you'll see, Edge, because they're now using Chromium as well, Edge also supports it. So it's looking at about 68% of all users will have the ability to talk to their computers through their web interface. When it comes to speech synthesis, so that's the ability for the computer to talk to you, usually by reading some text and taking some text and reading it out aloud, we're at over 90%. I mean, I think it's IE, all versions of IE and mobile opera. It's not, in other words, it's everywhere. So if you can absolutely safely start to use speech synthesis, but as speech recognition, still not quite, everybody, but it's certainly getting there at 68%. There's also a question of freedom. People are worried about their voices going upstream to Google or Microsoft or whoever's providing the service. I actually think that's a bit of garbage. Of all the people in this room, if we all were streaming at once and they were recording it all for computer training purposes, for neuro-linguistic training, so what if somebody hears it? It's meaningless. Someone in America hearing our conversations, it's really meaningless. Gives us a better service. So I'm not worried about that. Definitely not worried about, in theory, Big Brother is watching, but again, think of the volume of people who are using it. So what I'm going to do now is just going to switch out of this and show you a few demos. So there's lots, hopefully you can see that, if not I'll try and zoom in where needed. There's lots of different ways to do all of this stuff, and lots of different things you can do. So the most common one is web speech. So web speech is where you talk to it and it just stores your text. So let's activate it. So this is me talking to the computer, and hopefully it's typing everything that I'm saying. And that was activate it. So this is me talking to the computer, and hopefully it's typing everything that I'm saying. 100% accuracy. No training, nothing special. That's just 100% accuracy. You'll notice there's multiple variants of English, and so I was doing that with the American pattern. Had no problem. And if you speak other languages, there's lots of different languages supported. So it'll recognise if you're speaking in those languages as well. So that's pretty cool. I've written blog posts where I haven't used the keyboard or the mouse at all, where I've just dictated the entire thing. Now, might seem odd to some of you, the idea of talking to your computer when you want to write a letter, but actually speak to your parents or some of the older people who'll go, well, we used to employ people to take dictation. We used to have shorthand secretaries who learnt shorthand so that they could write really quickly. So it's actually nothing new. We just lost it, and it's coming back, the idea of talking to your computer in order to write something down. So that's the most basic example of the web speech API. Let's have a look at, give you a command. So, yeah. So here I've got all the HTML colours, and if I want to change the background to blue, no, wait a second. Sorry, it's because it's only working on discrete words, this one. Blue, red, salmon, goldenrod. See, it has no problem at all. Now, one of the reasons you saw I was touching the screen every time is because at the moment the API has a rule that it cannot be on without interaction. So you always have to press a button to switch it on. And for this specific one, it's press it, switch it on, wait for one word, and switch off again. So there's always a limitation for that at the moment. This is a little bit, so we can also test if the words that I'm saying match what I'm supposed to be saying. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit here. So, she sells seashells on the seashore. I heard the correct phrase. But if I get it wrong, what are you doing? I was asking for where are you going. So again, it can listen in to your speech and detect even quite subtle differences to work out whether that was, in this simple example, green or going to be a green or a red. We can also tie it in to other code which will work out the sentiments of your speech. So it'll work out, are you speaking happily? Are you speaking angrily? Because that can make a big difference to the actual meaning of the words that we use. So we can actually, a quick demo before of just talking into a text area or any input. This is a complete editor. It's using quill.js, which is a fairly standard WYSIWYG editor that's available. And I can speak whatever I want. New paragraph, and then I can even do things like full stop, new paragraph, format left. Okay, so I've forgotten some of the commands. Let me stop it. So with that, it can do a huge range of commands, and that's been programmed. So there's JavaScript in addition to the listening to the web speech, there's JavaScript to listen for specific words, such as, if this loads, copy to clipboard, insert a new paragraph, punctuation marks, special characters, quotes, brackets, everything that you would actually need. So it's not just pure text, it's everything you'd actually need. So you can type WTF apostrophe and it will come out correctly. The way they've done this as well is this part, the commands, because the speech recognition will work in multiple languages, the commands have been written in multiple languages. And I think currently it supports about 40-something languages. It's not a paid-for service, it's just a demo of 3 lines of code, 20 lines of the commands, and then include Quill.js in your form, and it turns your text area into an editor. But we can do more than that. So the web speech can do a lot of things, especially listening to what you do. But then if you actually want to do something productive with it, you actually start to have to write code. And there's 2 JavaScript libraries that you can use that are going to make your life super simple to do that. I'll show you both. The first one's called Any Control. And it's really simple. First thing you do, you just put that line in your file to reference it. And then you write your commands. So let me just find a command here. Okay, so here's a simple command. So the code just says, add the command variable, what variable is it? And then do something. So let me try this. Oh, it's popped up. So it's my assistant. Okay, so there's my questions, my variables. It's picked everything up that I wanted to do. But that was a complex one. Let's try this one. What is 74 times 97? 7,178 apparently. So it's and that was a really simple one. What is value times value? Calculate sum. Really, really simple stuff at this point. You can even go a little bit fancier. Okay, who is the President of America? The President of America is Donald Trump. Who's the President? Oh, wait a sec. Who is the President of China? Who is the President of China? President of China is, I'm not even going to pronounce it. It's probably wrong anyway. But that's just as an example of what you can do. You can start to put these commands together. Notice that the commands are all using variables, so it's really going to allow you to pass those words that it's understood into your sentences, into your functions and procedures. It's really simple. In this case, it has something called they call it My Assistant. That would be the wake-up word. So that's like, hey Siri, hey Google, all that sort of stuff. You don't need to have a wake-up word with this, but it can help. And the other library is called Anyang. Hello. Show me the Yorkshire Dales. Show me cold beer. So you can see there, it's gone off, it's done a Flickr query and come back with the result. So it just used the Flickr JSON API to do it, and the command was listening in. I think the code is down here somewhere. Literally, show me tag. That's what it's listening for. It just passes it into the Flickr API. So what you can do is only limited by what you can imagine. because it copes with most of the natural language stuff for you as well. This one I kind of like because I like hidden secrets on websites. Show TPS reports. Yeah, it's working well. Show TPS reports. It worked. What I forget is at the moment, quite often you have to wait a couple of seconds after waking it up before speaking. The other thing some of you may notice, if you've been to websites that do this sort of stuff, that do something like this, want to use your microphone or your camera, they usually ask for permission. There's a pop-up comes up and you notice there's no pop-up coming up. If you're on HTTPS, if your website's on HTTPS, and let's face it, if your website is not on HTTPS, go home, it only asks once, and that's it, it saves it from then on. If you're on HTTP only, then it will ask you every time, and actually gradually a lot of these libraries are stopping working completely on HTTP. So there's a lot of stuff you can do, and the code is super simple. I was going to mock up a real demo, but decided you're just going to see bad JavaScript. Yeah. And you can see bad JavaScript in front of your own computer. You don't need to sit here for it. So I just wanted to give you, those two libraries are the ones that they're working on top of the Web Speech API, which is built into the browser. Now, the thing with the Web Speech API is it's using the standard voices. There's, I think, 4 voices from Microsoft and about 20 voices from Google. And they're all pretty standard, and you'll have heard them a million times. It's the ones that are on your mobile phones and everything else. However, you can switch to using Google Cloud services or Bing's Azure's services, which offer you more voices. So I just typed this one in before, and this is going to do English USA.
Of the 48 counties in the UK, Yorkshire is the biggest, and as we all know, the bigger the better.
And of course that sounds silly in an American accent.
Of the 48 counties in the UK, Yorkshire is the biggest, and as we all know, the bigger the better. As every area has its flaws, Yorkshire truly outdoes itself in its strengths. There is a reason why it's known as God's own county. Yorkshire puddings, Yorkshire tea, Wensleydale cheese, Parkin, licorice, all find their origin in Yorkshire. We probably should also be credited for the Sunday roast, as, let's be honest, without a Yorkshire pud, it's simply not a Sunday roast.
So that's a much better quality voice. You can tell there was, I literally just typed the text in. So if you're writing code, this is what you would be doing is you'd be passing that code through to their API for the voice to come back. Yeah? It's very, very good. If you choose the right voices, then it can really add meaning, and it's a lot more unique than it would be if you were using some of the default voices. Although, of course, this way does cost you money. But I was experimenting with this, and I came across a service that lets me build my own voice. And unfortunately, I didn't believe that it would work, so I did the recording super quick. You have to say 40 sentences to train it. And I did it super, super quick, and I had a cold. But yesterday I went and did a new voice, trained it all again. Unfortunately, the service is down. So you're going to have to listen to what it can do with my cold. And that account has also run out of credit, so I can only do one more. So this is the one, part of the one we just heard.
Yorkshire is the biggest county in the UK. There's a reason why it's known as God's own county. Yorkshire puddings, Yorkshire tea, Wensleydale cheese, real beer, licorice, all find their origin in Yorkshire.
So hopefully you could hear it was still a little bit of me. I have listened to other people's ones, and they definitely do sound much more real. I was just ashamed that it didn't work for me before, but I did. Again, unfortunately, the last speaker has gone because I did this with her name, which I've no idea how you pronounce it, and I wanted to see if it got it right.
This month we have Tanya Lichtensteiger talking about the lessons she's learned in her career, and Brian Teeman talking about voice on the web.
So that was one of their other pre-done voices that you can hear. So there's a lot of stuff you can do. You don't have to use those default voices. Now the way that this works is you go through 40 very short sentences, and then it goes away and goes through gigabytes and gigabytes of training data to produce a signature. That signature is the uniqueness of your voice. Now, they're using this for a couple of different ways. One of the ways they're doing it is, you know about deep fake videos? So you could actually use this for a deep fake voice. But instead of doing that, what they're doing is they're using it to identify fake voices. So even though somebody can sound like, can be an impersonator and sound like somebody else, their signature is not the same. So they're actually using that to detect things like that. And if you want to, if you go online, you can actually find the guy who behind this has published all the software. The only reason I didn't get it installed on my own laptop was because it's Python, which is a pig to set up. And even when I finally got all of that done, I missed the README that said you now need to download over 500 gigabytes of data to put it through. And there was no guarantee it was even going to run, because it really runs best if you've got an NVIDIA graphics card in your machine as well, in order for the processing power. So this guy, he put this as a service online. But you could absolutely go ahead and create your own voices. Now, where does that get really clever? So this is, again, just some recordings of some research that some students have been doing to listen to a recording in Spanish of a real person, identify what it is, translate it, and then get a fake person to read it out aloud. So I'll just choose, does anybody speak Spanish? No, not really, that's fine, okay. Okay, let's try this one, number 14.
Sabes, cuando no conoces la ciencia no ves el cuadro completo.
And so this is one of the versions that's been translated by a computer. So it's been understood by the computer, translated, and then passed to a text-to-speech engine to speak it out.
You know, when you do not know the science, you do not see the whole picture.
So that's not a boring robotic voice. It's been able to pick up the sentiment of the original speech, translate it, and re-say it with the right one. I'll just do one other.
New hires at Cranfield University.
Oh, sorry, that was the English. That was press the one. Oh wait, let's try this one.
Deja de hacer eso.
Stop doing that.
And there was one really good one that I found before.
He visto un aumento del 60% en el valor de las ventas.
Okay, and
I've seen a 60% increase in value of sales.
pretty good. Now, again, this presentation, Amazon let me down again. because I wanted to do a universal translator as well. So, you know, on Star Trek, Uhura used to have that big device out of her ear and she used to press it to hear the other languages. So actually she wasn't pressing it to hear the languages, she was pressing it to stop it falling out of her ear, because it's a huge thing. But you can actually do that now. You can actually do it with, there's a few different ways. One, you can do it with any Bluetooth headset and Google Translate on your phone. It automatically works, so you can set it up, there's multiple devices. There's one called T2, I think it's on Amazon, it's £290, and that one works even better. It uses lots of different engines, and it's much faster at working out the communication. Unfortunately, I was going to show a video, their promotional video, but it fails the code of conduct for the event, what their promotional video is. But you can do that, and there is another one, which is an app called Piku, which is a completely free app, and you can get devices on Amazon that support it for £10. So the idea is you have one, you give one to the other person, you put on the phone, you say which languages you're using, and then that's it. Press to speak, let go, they hear it, you hear their response. And I think there's another one which, instead of having to press to speak, it uses the camera on the phone to detect who's speaking as well, so it's completely interactive. So they're not absolutely instantaneous, but they're pretty close. So just going to wrap up with, just to say, there's a lot you can do with voice on the web. Yeah, voice control, whether that's commanding your way around the computer, whether that's dictating to the computer, whether it's the computer telling you stuff back, is actually relatively simple for you to do. It's much easier than building a CMS. You know, it's relatively simple for you to do. And as long as you do it in such a way that it falls back, that there's a sensible fallback if someone doesn't want to use audio, or they can't use audio, then it's great. You're ready to go now. You're ready for the future. I mean, Google are really pushing this. Yeah, even if you're using Chrome, you've probably missed all the stuff that's there. But I mean, there's an add-on that I've got called Hands-Free for Web, and this will do all sorts of things. Let me completely control everything about my browser experience. Let me navigate the pages, scroll down, all sorts of different things. So there's lots of stuff you can do, and it's right there at the beginning. I should actually turn it off. And hopefully there's some ideas there for people to go away. Maybe just play with it. Yeah, it's super simple. If you use those two libraries, either Anyang or Any Control, you can get something up and running in minutes. Yeah, and it's not going to cost you anything either. If you want to start using the Google Cloud version or the Bing version for the language processor, that will cost you some money, but both of them have pretty generous free trials on a credits basis, so there's definitely enough to get along with there. And just have a go with it. Yeah, don't stick with the same stuff that you're doing day in, day out. Yeah, come up with something good. Come up with something fun. The market is wide open for voice on the computer. Absolutely wide open, because a lot of the companies that have traditionally been doing voice don't want you to use this stuff because their businesses disappeared. Dragon Naturally Speaking was probably the biggest voice dictation software that existed. Their sales, I know the sales manager of the UK, their sales now are like this much because the computers have got it all. So those people, there's plenty of opportunity for you to write really cool software that anybody can use via the web on your machine. On that, I'm going to say thanks very much, thank you for listening, and see you all in the pub.